Well, and you've been known for your creativity as well. Tell me a little
All
bit
of us
about,
were. All of us. You got to keep that in mind.
yeah. I heard you played on Dean Martin's Ashtray during
Right.
recording.
I remember that record. It was called Houston. We're going to Houston, Houston, Houston. And I had become Jimmy Bowen, the great producer for Reprise, which was Frank Sinatra's label. And we, of course, we made records with Frank. We did all these major, everybody that Frank signed practically in Las Vegas that he signed to Reprise. We did all their records. And anything we wanted to do, we had carte blanche. I mean, Jimmy Bowen knew that he could trust us with anything. In that particular record, Houston, I remember I had a big glass ashtray next to me, and for some reason, when I put it down at one point, I heard kind of a nice click. Not click, but a kind of a musical note come out of it. Ding, sort of dang for a second. And when we finished, we were listening to a playback, and I said, Jimmy, do me a favor, let me go in there and there's something I want to do. And he said, go ahead, no problem. And I took the ashtray, and whenever we did the chorus, we're going to Houston, Houston, Houston. In between, I would hit this particular note that happened to fit. Dink, dink. It sounded like a guy working on a railroad with one of those big hammers where they put the spikes into the railroad. And that's exactly what it sounded like. I was on a train. I mean, these were the thoughts that I used to get sometimes. I considered myself a method drummer because I worked in film as an actor. I learned a little bit about the acting business, and I knew that a lot of the actors that I worked with, Yul Brynner, some of the great actors, they were method actors. They wanted to see what their motivation was. Maybe they came in to do a scene 3 months after they did that original beginning of the scene. Now they had to finish the scene. And they had to have what they called their motivation. And that was they would play back what they did already, or if it was a brand new scene, it was a brand new scene in a film. They would play the scene so that the actor would be motivated to how he was going to play the scene. And that's what the director usually said, let's play it for the guys. Same way with cartoons. One of the great businesses in our business was doing cartoons. The guy would want to hear what the cartoon, see what the cartoon was about before he picked a voice. So in my case, I used to just say I always wanted to hear the song before we made the track. One perfect example was Bridge Over Troubled Water, Simon Garfunkel's, two of my favorite people. I just saw Artie recently. He's doing a single around the country. And I listened to the song, When You're Weary, Down and Out, whatever, and I just thought to myself, for some reason, it sounded to me like a slave on a chain gang. And somehow I had these tire chains in my automobile, which I'd never used, carry them in case I ever got up to the mountains in the snow. And I spoke to Roy Halley, the great engineer, and of course Paul and Artie. And I said, I have this feeling, just something I'd like to do. And they said, go ahead. And they found a room that was an empty microphone room, and it had quite a natural echo to it. And they got me a pillow for my knees, and I was on my knees slamming these tire chains on 2
Wow.
and 4. I was dragging them on 1 and 3. So now we're playing like a bridge, pow, over, pow, troubled water, pow. And that's what I was doing. And they were just adjusting whatever the knobs in those days before faders. They were adjusting the knobs, and we had it. And it became, obviously, it was that year, it was a record of the year. But I still hear that thing. It's an amazing, amazing thing to hear.
All the grooves of that album are really good. I particularly like Cecilia and the Boxer
Sure.
as well.
The Boxer was another one, a perfect example. The Boxer was the one that started the way stories get kicked around. The Boxer was one that Roy Halley, the great engineer, we were recording that particular track, not in L.A. We were in New York at the CBS building up on the 7th or 8th floor, and I believe it was a Sunday afternoon. Nobody's in the building, and Roy Halley had a habit of walking around, clapping his hands together, looking for natural echo, and he found a place. It was probably 15, 20 feet below the booth on a kind of a long walk, a long horseshoe drive walk from the booth down to the hallway. And in the hallway was the elevator. And it was 2 elevator doors. And somehow Roy found what he wanted right in front of the elevator doors. And so he called me and he said, let's put your drums here for the overdub. And I wanted to do these explosions, which we did. La-di-da, la-di-da, da-da-da-da-da, da-da-da-da-da. And now, meanwhile, I'm down there wearing headsets. I'm at these huge floor toms that we brought in for me for these explosions. And the microphones are over me. Nobody else can hear anything except me doing these crashes. Well, we're doing the overdubs, and it's going just fine. And at one point, in perfect synchronization, you had to be there. As my hands came down to crash on the drums, the elevator door opened, and there was a security officer standing there, security policeman, elderly man. Looked like someone had just blown a hole in him with a shotgun.
Wow.
Because it crashed as the doors opened. He thought he got killed. The doors closed. We never saw him again. And what happened was that all of a sudden the word got around that we did these overdubs in front of this elevator shaft, elevator doors, and now all of a sudden I'm doing interviews and they're asking me, how did you get the drums down in the elevator shaft? How did you get down in the elevator shaft? Did they have to lower you down in a harness? I mean, all these amazing stories. And it's exactly what happened. I was just set up in front of the elevator doors that happened to open in perfect synchronization with my crash. We never saw the security officer again. I believe it was a Sunday. Might have been a Saturday. Nobody was in the building. I guess no one had told the officer that there would be some music playing up there. And that's why he came up to investigate. Scared the you-know-what out of him. And that's the story. That's the story of the Boxer.